The provocation. The conference hall on Galactic Council Station Alpha buzzed with the usual diplomatic chatter. Ambassador Michael Torres adjusted his formal uniform and smiled at the Valerian delegate passing by. 15 years had passed since humanity joined the council, and those years had been good ones. Humans had established themselves as honest traders, skilled mediators, and curious explorers. 3 thriving colonies dotted human-controlled space, and more were planned for the coming decade. Torres had spent his entire adult life building these relationships. He knew the dietary preferences of the Zelthian ambassador, understood the cultural nuances of Draxian greetings, and could navigate the complex political landscape of 47 different species. He believed in the promise of galactic civilization, in the idea that diverse peoples could coexist peacefully through dialogue and mutual respect. His communication device vibrated. The message was flagged urgent, code red, eyes only. Torres excused himself from a conversation about trade routes and stepped into a private chamber. When he activated the message, his blood turned to ice. Meridian 7 was burning. Commander Sarah Chen had been drinking coffee when the alarm started. She set down her mug, frowning at the unexpected sound. Meridian 7 was one of the safest colonies in human space, located in a quiet sector far from any disputed territories. The alarm system rarely activated, even for drills. She walked to the command center of the orbital defense station, expecting to find a malfunction or perhaps an unscheduled supply convoy. Instead, she found her tactical officer staring at a screen filled with red signatures. "Commander, we have multiple hostile contacts entering the system," Lieutenant James Park said, his voice tight. 73 warships, Crithian Empire configuration. They're not responding to hails. Sarah's mind raced. The Crithian Empire was a mid-tier military power, aggressive but not suicidal. They had no territorial disputes with humanity. There was no reason for them to be here, certainly not with a battle fleet. "Raise shields," she ordered. "Send a priority distress signal to Earth Command. Try to establish communication with the Crithian vessels." The lead Crithian ship was 3 times the size of the defense station. Its hull was dark red, covered in sharp angles that made it look like a predator. When the communication channel finally opened, Sarah found herself looking at Overlord Zarthek. The Crithian commander was massive, over 8 feet tall with thick armored plates covering his body. His eyes were small and black, set deep in a face that seemed designed for intimidation. When he spoke, his voice was a deep rumble that the translator rendered as contemptuous and dismissive. "Human vessel, you are in territory that now belongs to the Crithian Empire. Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. Resistance will result in immediate destruction." Sarah kept her voice steady. "Overlord Zarthek, this is Commander Sarah Chen of the Meridian 7 Defense Force. You are in human territorial space without authorization. Withdraw your fleet immediately or we will be forced to defend ourselves." Zarthek laughed, a harsh barking sound. "You will defend yourselves? You have 1 small station and perhaps a dozen patrol craft. I have 73 warships. Do the mathematics, human. You have already lost." "This colony is home to 4.7 million civilians," Sarah said, her hands gripping the edge of her console. "There are schools here, hospitals, research centers. Whatever dispute you have with humanity, it can be resolved through the Galactic Council. There's no need for violence." The Crithian's expression shifted to something that might have been amusement. "Violence is exactly what is needed. For too long, you humans have been treated as equals when you are clearly inferior. You are weak, soft, and unprepared for the realities of galactic power. Today you will learn your place." The channel went dead. Sarah had exactly 4 seconds to process what was about to happen. Then the Crithian fleet opened fire. The orbital defense station had been designed to repel pirate raids and small-scale attacks. It was never meant to withstand a sustained bombardment from 73 military-grade warships. The shields held for almost 2 minutes before they failed. After that, it was just a question of how long the hull could survive. Sarah watched her station die around her. Explosions tore through the lower decks. Life support failed in 3 sections. The weapon systems went offline one by one. Through the viewport, she could see the colony below, peaceful and undefended. "Evacuate all personnel to the escape pods," she ordered. "Get everyone off the station now." "Commander, what about you?" Park asked. Sarah pulled up the manual controls for the station's main reactor. There was one thing she could still do, one final act of defiance. If she overloaded the reactor and timed it right, she might take a few Crithian ships with her when the station exploded. "I'm buying you time," she said. "Go." "That's an order." As her crew fled to the escape pods, Sarah Chen sat alone in the dying command center and watched the Crithian fleet descend toward Meridian 7. She thought about her husband Marcus, a botanist working in the southern agricultural zone. She thought about her daughter Emma, who would be in school right now, learning about Earth history. She wondered if she would ever see them again. The reactor reached critical mass. The station shuddered and began to break apart. Through the chaos, Sarah saw 3 Crythian warships caught in the explosion, their hulls torn open by the blast. It wasn't much, but it was something. Then everything went white. The bombardment of Meridian 7 lasted for 6 hours. The Crythian fleet methodically destroyed every major city, every orbital facility, every sign of human civilization. They targeted civilian centers first, hospitals and schools and residential districts. They broadcast their actions across open channels, ensuring that anyone listening would understand what was happening. Marcus Chen died protecting his research team, his body found in the ruins of the greenhouse complex. Emma Chen died with her entire class when plasma bombs turned their school into molten slag. Across the colony, millions of similar stories played out. Families huddled together in basements that became tombs. Emergency responders rushed toward disasters they could never hope to contain. Teachers shielded students with their own bodies in those final moments. By the time the attack ended, 4.7 million people were dead. The colony that had been a symbol of human achievement and hope was reduced to ash and rubble. Overlord Zarthek surveyed the destruction with satisfaction and transmitted a message to the Galactic Council. The human colony of Meridian 7 has been claimed by the Crythian Empire. All remaining human territories will surrender within 72 hours or face the same fate. This is not negotiable. This is inevitable. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened within hours. Representatives from dozens of species gathered to watch footage of the attack. The images were horrific. Bodies in the streets. Buildings collapsed into craters. Fires that would burn for weeks. The council chamber, usually filled with dignified debate, fell into uncomfortable silence. Ambassador Torres stood on the human platform, his face pale but composed. He had watched the footage 3 times, searching desperately for any sign that his sister and her family might have survived. They had been living in the northern district, near the university. That entire section of the city was gone. High Counselor Zephyra, an energy being of immense age and wisdom, spoke first. Her voice resonated through the chamber like distant thunder. The attack on Meridian 7 represents a clear violation of council law. The Crythian Empire has committed unprovoked aggression against a member species. This cannot be tolerated. Overlord Zarthek stood on the Crythian platform, showing no remorse. The council has grown soft. You speak of laws and rules while the strong are constrained and the weak are protected. This is not natural. This is not sustainable. The Crythian Empire will no longer pretend that all species are equal when clearly they are not. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Some species seemed shocked by the brazenness of the declaration. Others appeared thoughtful, even interested. The uncomfortable truth was that many council members had always viewed humanity as weak, as a young species that had been lucky enough to develop faster-than-light travel but lacked the military strength to defend themselves. Elder Velterra, a Quilarian physician who had spent decades studying various species, rose slowly from his platform. His body was frail with age, his skin covered in intricate silver patterns that denoted wisdom in his culture. Overlord Zarthek, Velterra said quietly, have you studied human history? The Crythian snorted. Why would I waste time studying the past of an inferior species? Because their past would teach you about their future, Velterra replied. I have spent 50 years researching humanity. I have read their literature, analyzed their wars, examined their cultural development. They are not what you think they are. They are weak, Zarthek said dismissively. I have proven this today. Velterra shook his head slowly. You have awoken something that should have been left sleeping. Humans are unique among galactic species. When they are at peace, they are gentle, creative, and generous. But when you threaten their families, when you kill their children, they become something else entirely. They become unstoppable. Empty words from a frightened old fool, Zarthek said. Torres listened to the exchange, his hands clenched into fists. He wanted to scream at the Crythian commander, to demand justice for the millions who had died. But he was a diplomat, trained to remain calm under pressure. He waited for the right moment to speak. High Counselor Zephyra called for order. Ambassador Torres, humanity must respond to the Crythian demands. What is Earth's position? Torres took a deep breath. He thought about his sister, about the millions of families that would never be whole again. He thought about the children who had died in their classrooms, the parents who had perished trying to protect them. He thought about what humanity had always done when faced with extinction. I request 72 hours to consult with my government, Torres said, his voice steady and cold. Zarthek laughed. 72 hours to compose your surrender announcement. Take all the time you need, human. The outcome is already decided. But Elder Velterra watched Ambassador Torres's face and saw something that chilled him. He recognized that expression. He had seen it in historical recordings of human leaders during their darkest hours. It was the look of someone who had moved beyond fear and anger into a realm of absolute determination. As the council session ended and delegates returned to their quarters, Velterra accessed the historical archives. He pulled up footage from humanity's past, recordings that most species found too disturbing to watch. He saw young soldiers charging into certain death to protect their homeland. He saw cities rebuilt from ashes by people who refused to accept defeat. He saw a species that had survived ice ages, plagues, world wars, and near-extinction events through sheer stubborn willpower. He found a recording from one of humanity's ancient conflicts, a speech given by a leader when his nation faced overwhelming odds. The words had been translated into Quilarian, but their power remained undimmed. "We shall fight with growing confidence and growing strength. We shall defend our home, whatever the cost may be. We shall never surrender." Velterra turned off the display and sat in darkness. Somewhere in human space, Earth was receiving news of the massacre. Somewhere, decisions were being made that would reshape the galaxy. The Crithian Empire believed they had won a great victory. They believed humanity would surrender or be destroyed. They had no idea what was coming. On Earth, in a secure bunker beneath the Atlantic Ocean, the United Command Council assembled. Every military leader, every head of state, every strategic advisor who mattered was present either physically or via holographic projection. The mood was grim but focused. Admiral Rebecca Stone stood before the assembled leadership. She was 53 years old, a veteran of the border conflicts and the architect of Earth's defensive strategy. Her gray hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and her eyes were hard as diamonds. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, "you've all seen the footage from Meridian 7. You know what the Crithians have done. The question before us now is simple: how do we respond?" President Catherine Walsh spoke from her holographic projection. "The Crithians are demanding complete surrender within 72 hours. They're threatening to attack our remaining colonies if we resist. Ambassador Torres is stalling, but we need to give him something to work with." "With respect, Madam President," Stone said, "I don't think diplomacy is going to solve this problem. The Crithians didn't attack us because of a border dispute or a trade disagreement. They attacked us because they think we're weak. They think they can kill millions of our people and face no consequences." "What are you suggesting, Admiral?" asked General Thomas Liu, commander of Earth's ground forces. Stone activated a holographic display showing the disposition of forces throughout human space. "For 15 years, we've been pretending to be weaker than we actually are. We've hidden our true military strength because we wanted to be good neighbors, because we hoped we'd never need it. That time is over." The display changed, revealing hidden shipyards, secret weapons development facilities, and classified military installations scattered throughout the solar system and beyond. "Our official fleet consists of 48 warships," Stone continued. "The Crithians know this. What they don't know is that we have another 237 combat vessels in reserve, hidden in locations they've never detected. We have weapon systems they've never seen, tactical capabilities they can't imagine, and soldiers who are ready to make them pay for every single life they took on Meridian 7. The room fell silent. Several leaders looked shocked, others grimly satisfied. "Project Nightfall is operational," Stone said quietly. "We've been developing it for 12 years, hoping we'd never have to use it. It's time to take the safety locks off." President Walsh leaned forward in her holographic projection. "Admiral, if we deploy Project Nightfall, if we reveal our true strength, there's no going back. The entire galaxy will know what we're capable of." "Good," Stone replied. "Let them know. Let every species understand that humanity is not prey. We're the apex predator that was sleeping, and the Crithians just made the fatal mistake of waking us up." The vote was called. One by one, every member of the United Command Council voted the same way. Authorization for total military mobilization. Authorization to deploy all classified weapon systems. Authorization for Admiral Rebecca Stone to do whatever was necessary to ensure the Crithian Empire regretted the day they decided to attack humanity. The transformation began immediately. Across Earth and throughout human space, the machinery of war came to life. Factories that had been producing consumer goods switched to military equipment within hours. Shipyards that had been building cargo vessels began assembling warships from prefabricated components. Recruitment centers were overwhelmed with volunteers, people whose friends and family had died on Meridian 7, people who wanted to make the Crithians answer for what they had done. In a classified facility on the far side of Luna, Dr. Jennifer Park supervised the final preparations for Project Nightfall. The weapon system filled an entire hangar, a masterpiece of human engineering that had consumed billions in funding and the efforts of the brightest minds in human space. Status report, Park said to her lead technician. All systems are green, Doctor. We're ready for deployment on your order. Park stared at her creation. Project Nightfall was an electromagnetic warfare suite so advanced that it could disable every electronic system in a star system simultaneously. Enemy ships would go dark, their weapons offline, their life support failing. It was a weapon of absolute dominance, designed to give humanity an insurmountable advantage in any conflict. She had argued against building it. She had warned that such power could corrupt, that humanity might become the very thing they feared. But now, with millions of her people dead, with images of burning cities seared into her memory, she understood why it had been necessary. Load it onto the Valkyrie, she ordered. Admiral Stone will need it. Across the solar system, similar scenes played out. Captain David Martinez prepared his heavy cruiser Retribution for combat. Lieutenant Commander Aisha Johnson ran her fighter squadron through combat drills. Major Carlos Reyes briefed his Marine battalion on assault tactics. Every soldier, every officer, every crew member understood what was at stake. This wasn't about territory or resources. This was about survival. This was about showing the galaxy that humanity would not go quietly into extinction. This was about making the Crythian Empire regret every single decision that had led them to Meridian 7. Admiral Stone stood on the bridge of her flagship, the battleship Valkyrie. Around her, the hidden fleet assembled. 285 warships, including the 48 official vessels and the 237 that had been built in secret. It was the largest human military force ever assembled, crewed by men and women who had one thing in common: they had lost someone on Meridian 7. Fleet status? Stone asked. Her tactical officer, Commander James Reynolds, checked his displays. All ships report ready for departure, Admiral. Weapon systems are charged, hyperspace drives are online, and Project Nightfall is loaded and secured. Stone looked at the faces of her bridge crew. They were young, most of them. They had grown up in an era of peace, believing that humanity's place in the galaxy was secure. The Crythians had shattered that illusion in 6 hours of senseless violence. Open a channel to all ships, Stone ordered. When the channel was active, she took a moment to gather her thoughts. She needed to find the right words, something that would steel their resolve for what was coming. This is Admiral Stone to all vessels. 3 days ago, the Crythian Empire attacked Meridian 7 without warning or provocation. They murdered 4.7 million of our people. They killed our families. They burned our cities. And then they laughed and demanded our surrender. She paused, letting the anger build. Today, we give them our answer. We are going to enter Crythian space, and we are going to dismantle their military piece by piece. We will show them what happens when someone attacks humanity. We will show the entire galaxy that we are not victims, we are not prey, and we will never bow to anyone who threatens our survival. The fleet waited in silence. They wanted to see human strength? Stone's voice was cold as the void. They're about to discover what 15 years of preparation looks like. They're about to learn why every predator species on Earth eventually went extinct, and humans didn't. They're about to understand that there are things in this universe far more dangerous than Crythian warships. She sat down in her command chair. All ships, engage hyperspace drives. Set course for the Crythian border. It's time to collect a debt. One by one, 285 human warships vanished into hyperspace, leaving behind nothing but empty space and the promise of retribution. The storm that had been gathering for 3 days was finally moving, and it was headed straight for the Crythian Empire with terrible, unstoppable purpose. In the Galactic Council chamber, Elder Velterra sat alone, monitoring long-range sensors. He saw the massive human fleet depart Earth space, saw them jump toward Crythian territory, and he knew with absolute certainty what was about to happen. The Crythians had made the same mistake that countless enemies throughout human history had made. They had mistaken kindness for weakness, patience for cowardice, and peace for inability to fight. They were about to pay for that mistake with everything they had. Velterra whispered a prayer in his ancient language, a prayer for the souls who would die in the coming days. But the prayer wasn't for humanity. It was for the Crythians, who had awakened the sleeping giant and now would face its wrath. The war had begun, and only one species would emerge intact. The Reckoning. The Crythian Border Defense Network had protected their empire for 3 centuries. 49 heavily fortified stations formed an impenetrable wall, each one bristling with enough firepower to vaporize an invasion fleet. Advanced sensor arrays detected anything approaching from light years away. Automated defense grids responded to threats in microseconds. No enemy had ever breached the Crythian border. No enemy had even tried in living memory. That perfect record was about to end. Admiral Rebecca Stone stood on the bridge of the Valkyrie, watching the tactical display as her fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Crithian space. The nearest defense station immediately lit up with weapons locks, preparing to unleash devastation on the human ships. "They're charging weapons," Commander Reynolds reported. "Multiple targeting systems acquiring our vessels. Estimate 15 seconds until they fire." Stone remained calm. "Deploy Project Nightfall." From the underside of the Valkyrie, a sleek cylindrical device detached and began to drift toward the border stations. It was smaller than most people expected, only about the size of a shuttle craft. Dr. Jennifer Park had designed it to be compact and efficient. Sometimes the most devastating weapons came in small packages. The device activated with a flash of blue light that expanded outward like a silent explosion. The electromagnetic pulse traveled at the speed of light, washing over the 49 border stations in an instant. Every computer crashed. Every weapon system went offline. Every power conduit overloaded. 3 centuries of technological superiority became worthless metal floating in space. The Crithian crews inside the stations felt their artificial gravity fail. Emergency lighting flickered and died. Life support systems switched to backup batteries that would last maybe 6 hours. In the command center of Station Prime, Commander Korath stared at dead screens in disbelief. "What happened?" he demanded. "Get the systems back online." His technicians worked frantically at manual controls. "Sir, everything is dead. The main computer, the backups, even the isolated systems. It's like someone erased every electronic component simultaneously." Korath felt cold fear creeping into his chest. He had served on this station for 20 years. He had watched countless enemy fleets turn away rather than face its firepower. Now his impregnable fortress was nothing more than a tomb drifting in the darkness. Through the viewport, he saw human ships approaching. They moved with precision and purpose, formations tight and disciplined. These were not the desperate actions of a weaker species. These were the calculated movements of a predator that had already won. "All stations report complete systems failure," Reynolds said. "Enemy vessels are disabled and drifting. No weapons, no propulsion, no communications." Stone nodded. "Captain Martinez, your squadron has the vanguard. Begin neutralization protocols." The heavy cruiser Retribution led 12 destroyers toward the helpless border stations. Captain David Martinez sat in his command chair, his jaw set with determination. His wife had been a doctor on Meridian 7, working in the children's hospital. She had died trying to evacuate her patients when the Crithian bombs fell. "Target Station Prime," Martinez ordered. "Fire on my mark." His weapons officer armed the railguns. "Locked and ready, Captain." Martinez thought about his wife's last message, a desperate audio recording where she begged someone to save the children. He thought about how she had died doing her duty while the Crithians laughed at human weakness. "Fire." The Retribution's rail guns spoke with cold precision. Hypervelocity projectiles slammed into Station Prime's hull, punching through the armored plating like it was paper. Atmosphere vented into space. Internal sections collapsed. The station that had stood for 300 years was torn apart in under 2 minutes. "Station Prime destroyed," the weapons officer reported. "Moving to next target." One by one, the border stations were eliminated. The Crithian crews couldn't fight back, couldn't even call for help. They could only watch through viewports as human ships methodically destroyed 3 centuries of military infrastructure. Some stations tried to evacuate their personnel in emergency pods, but even those systems had been disabled by Project Nightfall. Commander Korath spent his final moments thinking about the reports he had dismissed, the intelligence briefings about human military capabilities that seemed too exaggerated to be true. He had laughed at the idea that humans could pose a threat to Crithian superiority. His last thought before the hull breach reached his command center was a simple one: we were wrong. Within 4 hours, all 49 border stations were destroyed. The impenetrable defensive line that had protected the Crithian Empire for 3 centuries was reduced to debris and frozen bodies floating in the void. Stone studied the tactical display showing the devastation. She felt no satisfaction, no sense of victory. This was not about glory or conquest. This was about sending a message that would echo across the galaxy: humanity could not be attacked with impunity. "Status report on Crithian response forces?" Reynolds checked the long-range sensors. "We're detecting fleet movements from 3 military bases. Approximately 140 warships converging on our position. Estimated arrival in 6 hours." "They're going to try to trap us here," Stone said. "They think we'll be so busy congratulating ourselves that we won't notice them flanking us. Should we withdraw, Admiral?" Stone smiled grimly. "No, Commander. We're going to show them what human tactical planning looks like. Send the following orders to all ships, implement dispersal pattern Delta 7. We're going to let them think they have us surrounded. The human fleet scattered, breaking into smaller groups that appeared to be fleeing in different directions. To the approaching Krithian forces, it looked like panic, like the humans had overextended themselves and were now desperately trying to escape. Overlord Zarthek was not aboard any of the approaching ships. He was still on the homeworld, Kryth Prime, enjoying the accolades for his conquest of Meridian 7. But his second-in-command, General Zorkan, led the relief fleet with absolute confidence. The humans are scattering, Zorkan announced to his bridge crew. They destroyed our border stations with some kind of surprise weapon, but now they're running like the cowards they are. We will hunt them down group by group and eliminate them. His tactical officer hesitated. General, perhaps we should be cautious. The humans have shown capabilities we didn't expect. Cautious? Zorkan snarled. They are prey animals trying to act like predators. We outnumber them. We have them surrounded. This battle is already won. The Krithian fleet split into pursuit groups, each one chasing after what they thought were fleeing human vessels. They spread out across the border region, confident in their numerical superiority and tactical advantage. It was exactly what Stone had wanted them to do. All groups report in position, Reynolds said. The Krithians have taken the bait. Stone leaned forward. Execute hammer and anvil. The scattered human ships suddenly reversed course. What had appeared to be a panicked retreat transformed into a perfectly coordinated counterattack. Each Krithian pursuit group found itself surrounded by human vessels that had been hiding in their sensor shadows, using stealth technology that the Krithians didn't know existed. General Zorkan realized his mistake when 3 human destroyers appeared behind his flagship, their weapons already firing. Evasive maneuvers, he shouted. Return fire. But the human ships were faster, more maneuverable, and their weapons were devastatingly accurate. Zorkan's flagship took hit after hit, shields failing, hull breaches spreading through multiple decks. Around him, the Krithian fleet was being torn apart by an enemy that seemed to anticipate their every move. How are they doing this? Zorkan demanded as another explosion rocked his ship. How do they know where we'll be? The answer was simple but humiliating. Human tactical computers were running simulations based on 15 years of studying Krithian military doctrine. Every battle the Krithians had ever fought had been analyzed, every tactical pattern identified and catalogued. The humans weren't reading minds. They were just better prepared. Zorkan's flagship exploded in a ball of fire. His last transmission was a desperate warning to the homeworld: the humans are not what we thought. They are not prey. They are. The message cut off as the ship's power core detonated. The Battle of the Krithian border lasted 9 hours. When it ended, 140 Krithian warships had been destroyed. Human casualties, 7 ships damaged, none destroyed, total personnel losses under 200. Stone reviewed the battle reports with grim satisfaction. Transmit all tactical data back to Earth Command. Make sure the other colonies receive updated defensive protocols. And Reynolds, I want casualty reports from the Krithian side verified and documented. Admiral, why document enemy casualties? Because we're not monsters, Stone said quietly. We're going to show the galaxy exactly what happened here, who started it, and how we finished it. When this is over, no species will be able to claim we were the aggressors. While the fleet secured the border region, a second human force arrived at Meridian 7. General Patricia Hampton commanded the relief expedition, leading 50 troopships filled with Marines, engineers, and medical personnel. Her son had been a teacher on the colony, killed along with his entire class when the school was bombed. The Krithian occupation force on Meridian 7 numbered approximately 30,000 soldiers. They had been left behind to secure the territory and suppress any survivors. When they detected the approaching human fleet, they prepared for a ground battle, confident in their superior numbers and combat training. Hampton's forces descended through the atmosphere in armored dropships, landing in the ruins of what had been the colony's capital city. The Marines emerged in full combat gear, weapons ready, moving through the devastated streets with professional precision. The first engagement happened near the remains of the Central Hospital. A Krithian patrol squad opened fire on a Marine unit, expecting to pin them down and overwhelm them through superior numbers. Instead, the humans returned fire with weapons that seemed to know exactly where each Krithian soldier was hiding. Within 90 seconds, the entire patrol squad was dead, and the Marines hadn't lost a single soldier. How? The Krithian garrison commander, Officer Talvek, stared at the combat footage in disbelief. How did they kill 12 of our best soldiers without taking casualties? His aide checked the sensor logs. Sir, the humans appear to have enhanced targeting systems linked to battlefield awareness networks. They're sharing tactical data in real time across their entire force. Every soldier knows where every enemy is. Talvek felt the first stirrings of genuine fear. Get me Overlord Zarthek. Tell him we need reinforcements immediately. But there were no reinforcements coming. The Krithian fleet had been destroyed at the border. The occupation force on Meridian 7 was completely alone, facing a human military that had been preparing for this exact scenario for years. The battle for Meridian 7 lasted 18 hours. When it ended, the 30,000 Krithian soldiers had been systematically eliminated. Human casualties, 43 wounded, 7 dead. It wasn't a battle. It was an extermination. General Hampton walked through the ruins of the colony, documenting everything she saw. Mass graves where civilians had been executed. Hospitals that had been deliberately targeted. Schools reduced to rubble with the bodies of children still inside. Her documentation teams recorded it all, every war crime, every atrocity, every piece of evidence that would be presented to the Galactic Council. She found her son's body in what remained of his classroom. He had been trying to shield his students with his own body when the ceiling collapsed. Hampton knelt beside him for a long moment, not crying, not speaking, just remembering the boy who had grown into a man who died protecting children. General, her aide said softly, we have survivors requesting assistance. Approximately 200,000 colonists in underground shelters. Hampton stood up, forcing herself back into command mode. Get medical teams to every shelter. Priority evacuation for the wounded and children. And make sure someone is recording everything. The galaxy needs to see what the Krithians did here. The footage from Meridian 7 was transmitted to every major news network in galactic space. Images of destroyed hospitals, murdered children, executed civilians. The Krithians had broadcast their attack as a show of strength. Now humanity was broadcasting the evidence of Krithian war crimes to the entire galaxy. Reaction was swift and devastating. Species that had been neutral suddenly condemned the Krithian Empire. Trade agreements were suspended. Diplomatic ties were severed. The Krithians found themselves isolated and facing universal condemnation for their actions. But Admiral Stone wasn't finished. The destruction of the border defenses and the occupation force was just the beginning. She was going to dismantle the entire Krithian military infrastructure piece by piece. Over the next 8 days, the human fleet moved through Krithian space like a surgical instrument. Every military base was identified, isolated, and destroyed. Every shipyard was reduced to wreckage. Every weapons depot was turned into radioactive ash. Stone's fleet moved with such precision and speed that Krithian forces never had time to organize an effective defense. Captain Martinez and the Retribution destroyed a major fleet anchorage in the Torval system, eliminating 63 warships that were still under construction. Lieutenant Commander Aisha Johnson led fighter strikes against orbital defense platforms, her squadron dancing through defensive fire that would have destroyed less skilled pilots. Major Carlos Reyes and his Marines assaulted a strategic command center on a fortified moon, capturing classified documents that revealed the full extent of Krithian military deployments. Each victory was documented, verified, and transmitted back to Earth Command. Human forces took care to minimize civilian casualties, often spending extra time and resources to ensure that only military targets were hit. When mistakes happened, when civilians were accidentally caught in crossfire, the incidents were investigated and the findings published openly. The contrast with Krithian tactics could not have been more stark. Where the Krithians had deliberately targeted civilians, humanity went out of its way to protect them. Where the Krithians had bombed hospitals and schools, humanity established field hospitals to treat wounded Krithian civilians. Where the Krithians had executed prisoners, humanity took prisoners and treated them according to the Geneva Conventions that had governed human warfare for centuries. Elder Velterra watched the human military campaign from his quarters on Galactic Council Station Alpha. He had tried to warn Overlord Zarthek that attacking humanity was a fatal mistake. Now he was watching his prediction come true in real time. They're not just defeating the Krithians, he said to his aide. They're teaching the entire galaxy a lesson. They're showing everyone what modern warfare looks like when conducted by a species that has spent thousands of years perfecting it. His aide looked at the tactical displays showing human fleet movements. Should we be afraid of them, Elder? Velterra considered the question carefully. We should be respectful. Humanity has proven they can be gentle neighbors and terrible enemies. The wise course is to ensure we remain their friends. On the 12th day after the attack on Meridian 7, Admiral Stone's fleet arrived at Kryth Prime. The Krithian homeworld was a large planet with reddish continents and purple oceans, home to 11 billion citizens. It was defended by the remnants of the Krithian fleet, approximately 80 warships that had been pulled back for a final desperate defense. Overlord Zarthek stood in his command center, watching the human fleet take up positions in orbit. For the first time in his life, he felt genuine fear. His border defenses were gone. His military bases were destroyed. His fleets had been systematically eliminated. And now the humans were here, at his homeworld, with enough firepower to reduce the entire planet to glass. "Open a channel to the human fleet," Zarthek ordered, his voice hoarse. The communication channel activated, and he found himself looking at Admiral Rebecca Stone. She sat in her command chair with perfect composure, her gray hair pulled back, her eyes cold and merciless. "Overlord Zarthek," Stone said. "I'm glad you've decided to talk instead of fight. It will save lives." "What do you want?" Zarthek asked. Stone's expression didn't change. "I want you to look at your tactical display. Look at the fleet I have in orbit around your homeworld. Look at the weapons I could deploy right now that would turn this planet into a radioactive wasteland." Zarthek looked. The display showed 268 human warships in perfect formation, weapons charged and ready. His remaining 80 ships were hopelessly outmatched. "I could do to Kryth Prime what you did to Meridian 7, Stone continued. "I could bomb your cities. I could target your hospitals and schools. I could kill 11 billion of your people and then laugh about it while demanding the surrender of your remaining territories." Zarthek felt bile rising in his throat. "Please. But I'm not going to do that," Stone said. "Do you know why? Because humanity doesn't make war on civilians. We don't target children. We don't commit genocide. We're going to show you and every species in this galaxy what real strength looks like." She leaned forward slightly. "Here are my terms. You will surrender your entire military to human authority. Every ship, every weapon, every soldier. You will submit to a war crimes tribunal where you and your officers will answer for the massacre on Meridian 7. You will pay reparations to the families of every person who died in your unprovoked attack. And you will accept human observers at every level of your government to ensure you never again threaten peaceful species." "And if I refuse?" Stone's smile was colder than the void. "Then I will disable every military vessel in orbit, land troops on your planet, and hunt you down personally. But I still won't harm your civilians. Because that's the difference between humanity and the Krythian Empire. We're actually civilized." Zarthek looked around his command center. His officers stared at their screens, knowing they were beaten. The overlord who had been so confident 12 days ago, who had laughed at human weakness and demanded their surrender, now understood what Elder Velterra had tried to warn him about. Humans were not weak. They had never been weak. They had simply been patient, hoping that peace would prevail. But when peace failed, when their families were threatened, they became the most dangerous species in the galaxy. "I accept your terms," Zarthek said quietly. "Smart choice," Stone replied. "Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded." "An overlord? You should know that every moment of your trial will be broadcast across the entire galaxy. Everyone will see what happens when someone decides to commit war crimes against humanity." The channel closed. Zarthek slumped in his command chair, a broken leader of a defeated empire. Around him, Krythian officers began the process of surrender, shutting down weapon systems and opening airlocks for human boarding parties. In the Galactic Council chamber, species representatives watched the footage of Krythian surrender with a mixture of shock and awe. In less than 2 weeks, humanity had dismantled one of the most powerful military forces in the sector. They had done it with precision, efficiency, and a level of strategic sophistication that left military analysts speechless. Ambassador Torres stood on the human platform, his face composed but his eyes still haunted by the loss of his sister and her family. High Counselor Zephyra addressed the assembly. "The conflict between humanity and the Krythian Empire has concluded with Krythian surrender. The Council must now address the aftermath and determine appropriate consequences for the unprovoked attack on Meridian 7. Torres stepped forward. "The human government requests permission to conduct war crimes tribunals for Overlord Zarthek and his senior officers. We will present evidence of deliberate targeting of civilian populations, execution of prisoners, and other violations of galactic law." Several species representatives looked uncomfortable. The Draxian ambassador spoke up. "Will these tribunals be fair? Or will they be revenge?" "They will be fair," Torres said firmly. "Every defendant will have legal representation. Every piece of evidence will be verified. The proceedings will be open to galactic observers. Humanity seeks justice, not vengeance." Elder Velterra rose slowly. "I have one question for Ambassador Torres. Humanity has demonstrated overwhelming military superiority. You could easily conquer the Krythian Empire, enslave their population, seize their resources. Why are you choosing not to?" Torres looked at the Elder Quilarian with respect. "Because that's not who we are. We didn't want this war. We wanted to be peaceful members of the galactic community. But when the Crithians killed our people, we had to respond. Now that we've won, we're going to show the galaxy what humanity stands for: justice, accountability, and the rule of law. The council chamber fell silent. Species that had dismissed humanity as weak now understood they had misjudged completely. Humanity wasn't weak. They were strong enough to show mercy even when they had every reason to seek revenge. The War Crimes Tribunal lasted for 3 months. Evidence was presented meticulously: recordings of Overlord Zarthek ordering attacks on civilian targets, testimony from survivors describing executions and massacres, forensic analysis of bomb patterns showing deliberate targeting of hospitals and schools. Zarthek and 47 of his senior officers were found guilty of war crimes and crimes against sapient beings. They were sentenced to life imprisonment under human supervision, their assets seized to pay reparations to the families of Meridian, 7 victims. The Crithian Empire accepted the verdicts without protest. Their new government, elected under human oversight, began the long process of rebuilding relationships with the galactic community. Human observers remained stationed throughout Crithian space, ensuring that militaristic elements could never again seize power. Admiral Stone returned to Earth a hero, though she refused to accept any medals or commendations. "I was just doing my duty," she said at the memorial service for Meridian, 7 victims. The real heroes are the 4.7 million people who died simply because they chose to build a new life on a distant world. They're the ones we should remember. Commander Sarah Chen, who had survived the destruction of the orbital defense station, was promoted to admiral and given command of the rebuilt Meridian, 7 Defense Force. The colony was slowly being reconstructed, this time with military defenses that would make any future attack impossible. Captain Martinez retired after the war, spending his remaining years teaching at the Naval Academy. His lectures on the Crithian War became required study for every officer candidate, lessons on how to wage war with precision and end it with mercy. In the Galactic Council, humanity's status shifted dramatically. Species that had once viewed humans as weak junior members now treated them with wary respect. Trade agreements became more favorable. Diplomatic proposals were taken seriously. And when conflicts arose elsewhere in the galaxy, both sides often requested human mediation, knowing that humanity would be fair even if it wasn't always gentle. Elder Velterra published a comprehensive study of the Crithian War titled The Sleeping Giant, A Cautionary Tale. The book became required reading in diplomatic academies across the galaxy. Its central thesis was simple: never mistake patience for weakness, never confuse kindness with inability to fight, and never, ever attack humanity's children. Ambassador Torres eventually retired and returned to Earth. He spent his final years working with the families of Meridian, 7 victims, ensuring they received proper support and that their loved ones were never forgotten. At his funeral, representatives from 43 different species attended, paying respects to the diplomat who had held humanity together during its darkest hour. 20 years after the war, a monument was unveiled on the rebuilt Meridian, 7. It stood in the center of the new capital city, a massive structure of black stone inscribed with the names of all 4.7 million victims. At the dedication ceremony, the current human president spoke to a crowd of survivors, veterans, and galactic dignitaries. "We built this monument to remember what happened here. Not to celebrate victory, but to honor those who died and to remind ourselves and the galaxy of the cost of war. Humanity proved we could fight. Now we must prove every day that we prefer peace." The crowd stood in silence as the names scrolled across the monument's surface. Teachers and students. Doctors and patients. Parents and children. Farmers and engineers. Artists and scientists. Each name represented a life cut short, a future stolen, a family broken. But also each name represented why humanity had fought with such determination. Why they had unveiled their hidden strength. Why they had crossed the galaxy to make the Crithians answer for their crimes. In the end, the Crithian War taught the galaxy 3 fundamental truths about humanity. First, that humans would go to extraordinary lengths to avoid war, preferring diplomacy and cooperation whenever possible. Second, that when forced to fight, humans would do so with precision, power, and strategic brilliance that few species could match. And third, that even in victory, even when they had every right to seek revenge, humans would choose justice over vengeance and mercy over massacre. The Galactic Council was shocked by Earth's ruthless retaliation. But they were even more shocked by what came after: humanity's demonstration that true strength lies not in the ability to destroy enemies, but in the wisdom to know when to stop. Admiral Rebecca Stone stood alone at the Meridian, 7 monument on the anniversary of the attack. She was 81 years old now, retired for over a decade. She placed her hand on the cold stone and thought about all the names inscribed there. We kept our promise, she whispered. We made them pay. But we didn't become them. We're still human. Behind her, the rebuilt colony thrived. Children played in parks that had once been battlefields. Families lived in homes constructed on the ashes of the old city. Life continued, because that was what humanity did best: survive, rebuild, and refuse to let tragedy define them. The sleeping giant had awakened, fought its battle, and returned to rest. But now the entire galaxy knew it was there, watching, waiting, hoping for continued peace but ready for whatever might come. And that knowledge, more than any weapon or fleet, was humanity's greatest defense. The Crithians had learned it the hard way. The rest of the galaxy had learned it by watching. Some lessons can only be taught once. The Galactic Council had learned theirs. Humanity hoped they would never forget.